When you're walking Rocky in a new country, everything feels like a dream. New country, new smells, is attentive, great weather, slower pace. But retiring permanently, that's not a holiday, guys. It's visas, taxes, no one likes to do that, let's be honest. Residency rules, real lifestyle trade-offs. Especially for Americans, this can be a real eye-opener, but for everybody else for that matter. But that's what we unpack today with Federica. Let's find out more. Federica Grazi is the founder of Mitos Relocation Solutions, a London-based advisory firm specializing in retirement relocation. With a background spanning ultra-high net worth advisory and government fiscal policy at JP Morgan, she brings institutional-grade strategy to one's most personal decision, retirement. Having lived across 3 continents, she combines technical expertise with first-hand insight into the realities of relocating across borders. Welcome to Rocky CEO.
Thank you. Hello, everyone.
How we came across each other. I think it was through LinkedIn, wasn't it?
Yes, I agree. That's the same I remember.
How was maybe the shift from Italy to London, which is something I don't know, maybe a little background about you.
To be honest, as you said, London was just the last one of my many destinations. I did leave Italy perhaps 12 years ago. And I did since then Brazil, Bangladesh, Spain, Thailand, Russia, Switzerland, and London. Every move, different for many reasons. The last one in London, which now has been over 7 years, was quite smooth. It was within the same company, JP Morgan, and I was reuniting with my current husband. So I did have already, a roof straight away. So among all of them was perhaps one of the easiest. London is for now home. So I hope you come back at least to visit once.
Quite a shift from corporate banking situation to what you do now. So why did you do that change? And, you felt it was time for a change, or, what happened there?
Yeah, it's a big shift. I think it's a lot more common from other routes, perhaps consulting. Not a lot of my ex-colleagues in London have made the jump. For me, I think I always had a little bit in my heart that I would like to start something mine, perhaps for the sense of purpose of something that you really believe in. I guess also what I like of it is the ongoing learning. You kind of never stop as the company evolves. And I did spend a few years in banking, and I guess at some point you do learn a lot and contribute a lot. But then after many years, I think it starts being also a lot about the kind of corporate growth, the corporate ladder within the company. And of course, there's always opportunities to learn and evolve. But if you look at the 80-20 rule, I had the feeling that I kind of had done a lot of that work and I was ready to move on. In between opportunities, I did also spend 2 years in a startup. It was focused on project finance with the government about reskilling opportunities. So I did keep my government relation hat, which was what I used to do in banking. So it was a bit less of a smooth, let's say it was a smooth transition. Similar job, but different context. But that was also really helpful to kind of test some of the dynamics of a small scale business. Really exciting. And then, in 2024, I decided to make the move. I found something that for me was really meaningful. I did start from the idea of starting something in the silver economy, just because I feel really connected to it. I do a lot of volunteering with older people in London. I'm on the board of trustees for an NGO. And so I did find a lot of meaning by doing something there. And I brought it together with, as you said, something that I have lived firsthand, the beauty of living abroad, the opportunities that come with it. And let's say this came from a realization that more and more people are dreaming about it. Retirement is seen as a new moment of opening rather than decline and kind of closing up. And there's a lot of unmet demand. And so that's how kind of all the points kind of aligned in terms of what I kind of knew how to do, what excited me, and also obviously the market opportunity that I did observe.
Federica, if you don't mind, can you expand a little on the silver economy, which is what you touched upon earlier? Our listeners might not be familiar with the term.
Silver economy is a pretty broad space. It's at this stage effectively everything that is related to people of a certain age up, perhaps 60 plus, but I don't think there is any official definition. Traditionally has enclosed a lot of the, retirement interventions, medical, perhaps medical tourism, so everything a little bit more related to the traditional sense of retirement. But today it is opening up to also more active engagement services and products for this group of people.
Thank you for the view on that. So essentially, Mitos Relocation. So give us a view on exactly what is the core business, and then we can go on some more questions on this.
What we really want to achieve is to be the pioneers of everything related to retirement relocation. Obviously, there are already many actors in the sector, more in terms of specific expertise. But the way we have approached this is to be fully specialized in this, but then to diversify in terms of what we can offer specifically to this niche. What does it mean in practice? I think two things. Diversification, by country, the most obvious way to think about it. So at this stage, we are active in 3 countries, which are Greece, Italy, and Cyprus, with the goal to expand first in all the key Mediterranean destinations, but then even long-term globally. So it's going to really become the go-to company if someone wants to retire abroad. All the key markets should be eventually covered. So that's one. But number 2, I think even most importantly, in terms of service, we will continue offer more services. So the core, obviously, as you can imagine, is the retirement itself, when someone is ready to help them organize. And the way we do it is by becoming project managers. So we sit in the middle and we coordinate all the key aspects from immigration, taxation, healthcare, housing, the customs. So everything that you think about when it comes to relocating abroad in retirement, that is something that we can cover. But the reality is that a lot of the business is actually in what comes before and after. Before, there's a lot of demand in terms of deciding where someone has to go, because it's not enough to just say, I've been on holiday somewhere, right? Someone wants to take this decision very thoroughly and with proper awareness. So we are starting to give more and more help with that path of perhaps comparing countries or confirming that one specific country makes sense, organizing scouting trip. We will also start at some point to organize some group trips, for example, some sort of summit to help them decide about a country. So that's all stuff that comes before. Also after, of course, as you can imagine, one of the key definitions of success for retirement abroad is the community. So having then enough volume, we definitely want to invest in that local community creation and promotion. We have been asked already to offer some sort of concierge services for people to have always a reference point when they move to a certain point. There's long-term growth really in many aspects, even perhaps in real estate, if we want to create some sort of communities all in the same place. So the idea is really to become long-term, that one big international name that can help you with anything you need about retirement abroad.
I was under the impression that you're covering only Italy at the beginning for some reason, but instead you just mentioned Greece and Cyprus as well. So those are countries that follow, I would say, a similar lifestyle for the most part, Mediterranean and relaxed, yet kind of, efficient in terms of services to an extent, because I know that for other extents, they are complicated to move, for sure, because, I know about our country, how complicated it is, and I cannot imagine Greece and Cyprus bureaucracy will not be so simple. So then the question is, how did you choose these 3 for your option countries, let's say, that people can choose from with working with you?
I did start with the Mediterranean by virtue of coming from there. I'm Italian, I've lived in Spain, my husband is Greek, so I speak basically all the languages of the area. But specifically, I did start with Greece, not with Italy, despite being Italian, because I thought that was really at this stage the best country to retire to globally. And the dimensions that we look at are pretty macroeconomic related, which is, if you want, my background. So you look at, obviously, taxation, you look at immigration routes, you look at cost of living. There are many, many factors that should be, taken into account. And obviously, there's no, objective better option for anyone, because then there's a lot of subjective factors that obviously need to be taken into account. But just when you build an atlas of all the various destinations, Greece really stood out to me. And I did start there. It was also pretty low competition, despite, I think, a pretty good demand. And very interestingly, then, this year in 2026, Greece was voted by International Living, which is the most reputable source of information for retirement abroad. It was voted the best destination globally. So I think I was a little bit of a, one step in advance on it, which was really good, obviously, because now the demand is even higher. So that's how it started. And it has been evolving with similar criteria. So both Cyprus and Italy, specifically southern Italy, have tax incentives for foreign retirees. They both offer different immigration options. They're both open to foreign retirees. Traditionally, there are other countries that are also really popular. I think two of the most famous are Spain and Portugal. Of course, the goal is to end up going there as well. But despite having, again, speaking the languages and having pretty good context, I decided not to start there because from a macro perspective, they're slightly more in decline. They've had a lot of people for many years, and so now they're rolling back some of the incentives. They're removing some of the immigration options. They become more expensive. They have, they're perhaps still great places and still open, but not as they used to be. So I prefer to position myself as someone focused on more up and coming destinations, and then obviously as the international scaling continues, then I will also end up going there.
You're right that Spain and Portugal have been, let's say, hot for a while, and I think I read an article on something you shared on LinkedIn saying that, yeah, Spain in fact has several dependencies that one might not think of, which can be tricky for people moving there. Therefore, that's why you were recommending something else at the time. So if I remember, one other thing, which from our earlier conversation, I was under the impression that you were also advising to companies as well. So because there's been a lot of talk, this might be a bit of a side point, but I think it's also good to cover. There's been a lot of talk of companies that want to move to Italy, for tax purposes. You remember we discussed it briefly.
Yes.
Because there's some special rule for high net worth people and companies that can you can move to Italy for a better tax situation. But that's not the case with you, right? That's not what you do, just to clarify.
That's not my focus. So I do not advise corporates at all. I have had discussions with people that may consider the flat tax, which is either in Italy now is 300k. They have the same in Greece, which is 100k, so a little bit more affordable, as it used to be in Italy up to a couple of years ago. So obviously for retirees that have very high incomes, it could make sense then to consider those ones. But of course, this is really not the majority of them. So for retirees, often there are other tax incentives which are structured in the way of a flat percentage tax, which is, for example, 7% in Greece and southern Italy, or 5% in Cyprus.
Speaking of, your core target audience, the retirees, in fact, do they need to have a certain income? It doesn't have to be specific, but in order to work with you, etc. Or it does apply. Someone just wants to move to those countries can contact you.
There's not an entry income, so everyone can contact me. Of course, the level of service that we offer is very tailored and advanced. So I have observed that most of the customers come from a middle high income level, not necessarily ultra high net worth multimillionaires, but people for whom this international tax structuring makes sufficient financial sense so that they can pay someone to really handhold them throughout the whole move.
So on your website, you have 5 steps for doing the move, or like a guide. Can you tell us more about that?
Yes, of course. Well, that's a free resource that I like to share with people that are starting to think about. Just because, again, there's so many people dream about it, but not many know even how to start thinking about it. So this 5-step guide goes into themes, for example, which criteria you should be thinking about when deciding a country, which goes back to what we were saying. Is it important for you? Obviously, people think about the climate or the cost of living, but it's so much more articulate than this. You could think about how many flights per week back to your home destination do you want to have? The language integration, how important is it? do you prefer to be on your own, living a bit more introverted life, or do you want to be very close to an expat community? So there are so many different questions. So one of the important topics that I go into is how to effectively think about deciding a country. It gives some tips in terms of visiting. This is something that I'm always quite vocal about, the importance of spending some time, not just improvising yourself and going for the first time, just to manage the transition without regret and second thoughts. I do have some tips about integration, the first steps, how to, what to learn, what to prioritize, not just from a bureaucratic perspective, but also in terms of, the quality of life as you move. So it's really kind of some sort of, a few tips to process the decision and the move, a timeline. I do have a timeline of things you should do kind of any step from an administrative perspective, immigration perspective, tax perspective, and so on. So welcome everyone to sign up. It's free. So hopefully you can read something interesting.
Thank you for the view. While you were saying this, it make me think about something that we are in the middle of a move right now. So perhaps I should download that PDF. Because, we are moving lock, stock, and barrel actually to the Czech Republic. Me, my wife, the dog, our company, everything. So not in these countries you mentioned. So it's a bit of a different move. And ourselves, we have moved across a number of countries as well. And I would say that you cover a really strong point when it comes to the integration, because doing it ourselves, we succeeded. We managed to move in a number of countries. I work in Malta, UK, Netherlands, Germany, is something. You do all the preparation, the research. But when you have so much other things to do, it's tough to cover all the bases, literally, let's say. But the integration side, I think that's something we were often lacking, in fact, in our own. And for the most part, we've been just doing our own thing. And I felt that in some countries, we were never fully integrated after all. Also because we didn't live too many years there. That's another story. Or we didn't bother learning the language, and we have the luxury of speaking English in the most countries. So that was for me something. For example, right now where we are in Croatia, it was for a while. But I don't think we have integrated much, although it's a similar country to Italy. I think that's also a point there to the visiting the place, because it's very important to understand if that's the place where you want to go. So we can connect to my next point here. Do you think people often do the mistake of when they think they want to move somewhere, they don't go either, maybe they don't visit the place, or they don't do enough research, and then they go, hey, I want to move to Greece or Spain, etc. Then they go and then they realize that was not for them, something went wrong. Can you tell us maybe a couple of stories of people coming to you, without making names, but people like some real life stories?
I have a service that is specifically for people that want to go somewhere, but before moving everything, they kind of want to confirm. This is a mix of briefs, calls. I always, again, recommend to go and visit, spend some time. And I have seen a few clients that were really motivated to go somewhere, but then they have changed their mind during this. And in the end, for me, it's a success. Even if obviously, I wouldn't then follow these clients throughout the whole journey. So obviously, it's in a way a lost opportunity. But for me, it's still a success knowing that these people have taken this decision with full awareness rather than regretting it later on. A couple of examples. One was more for reasons of administrative, let's say, related aspects. In specific, we did realize that the best visa for him would have also forced him to live in the country for 6 months, a year at least. Otherwise, he couldn't have renewed it later on in 3 years. And looking in practice at his agenda as someone who had retired but still kind of taking some freelance engagement around the world with a partner who was also living in a different country. So we did realize that it wouldn't have been feasible for him. He would have been really stressed about this let's say, limitation. And then he decided in the end not to go for it. Obviously, he still visits, but not, let's say, as a full-time resident. So this was one. Another couple decided not to move after visiting because they realized that the shift in lifestyle was too large. This is both cases are from Americans living on the West Coast. And for this second, it was a couple, still pretty young, early 60s, very active. So their dream was to move to Europe to travel, to do hiking, diving, really, really sporty people. But they realized that the day-to-day in Greece, specifically Crete, which is where they were dreaming about, it was perhaps a little bit too slow without the services they were used to. And so now they're still thinking about living in Europe, but they haven't decided where, so they're traveling. That was my advice. I was like, it's fine, take a couple of years, you have a strong passport. Obviously, there are limitations of how long you can stay in Schengen, but there are a few countries in Europe that are not Schengen, so you can spend 3 months in Albania, 3 months in Cyprus, or a few other options, and then pop back to whatever, Greece, Italy, Portugal. So that's what they're doing.
I was just thinking at our, let's say, American cousins, which have always had the dream of living in Europe, in Italy, etc., for the most part. And I can imagine the situation you just described, that they even maybe go on, they do the move, or maybe they're just in the information stage. And then they realize they have to sacrifice a number of things they're used to, the commodities, things. I can just describe running a business in Croatia, for example. It's tough. So you need to really muster up some courage and patience. So do you think this is a point where people underestimate, especially from the US and other countries where, let's say, business is simple, paperwork are simple, and they don't consider that it's not everywhere around the world the same?
Definitely. And, I don't fault them. If when you go traveling, you don't face with the same barriers. And from someone who, both of us have moved abroad, then you realize that no country is perfect. It might be a bit easier from an immigration perspective, but then perhaps the culture is harder and so on. So it's about awareness, preparation. I think is really, really key. You did mention language before, and I do think language learning is really important, even if it's not fully mastered, but for someone who's serious about moving abroad. And that's hard. That's a challenge. I've learned Greek in my 20s for my husband, and I can imagine someone at any age, but especially maybe at 60s is a hard language. But I do recommend it to at least learn a little bit of it, because it does help with integration. So that's one. And I do think, again, preparation, but also a little bit of flexibility, because obviously if you move abroad, you're the guest, so you cannot expect to live like back home.
And since we're in this topic, are there any specific, target audiences that you find yourself advising mostly to? For example, people from the US, or is people from other countries generally, because I have a decent network on my own. I'm thinking if I hear someone that asks me about this, are there any specific target markets that are, your ideal for you?
I work mostly with Americans and British. I have also worked with a few other, like people from other countries. So for example, Ireland, some other places in the European Union, also several Europeans that live abroad. I'm working with a Dutch who lives in New Zealand, so perhaps they want to come back, but it's challenging, right, after many years lived abroad. So this is, for now, most of my client base, of course, open to expanding. I do work with, obviously, with them directly. Very often, I'm also connected by their financial advisors, because obviously that would be the figure who they ask first, their trusted figure for this kind of financial decisions. And often, obviously, it's not their field, right? So they wouldn't have really the tools to advise on that one. So very often I do get inquiries also from the financial advisors who kind of find me then to help with the decision and perhaps the execution.
8 countries. There's something you lived in all those countries. Again, different challenges, but which one was the most memorable for you, and maybe the most difficult at the same time?
Difficult one was Bangkok, because I moved there. Very often, if you move as part of a is established large business, then you would have some peers that usually start with you. That was the case for me, for example, in Geneva, in Switzerland, as I was an analyst program of JP Morgan. So, I didn't know anyone, but then you go and you have 30 people that are doing exactly the same as you. So you grow a community very quickly. In Bangkok, I was in a startup, and people were having kind of their families, their existing lives, and it was not so easy for me to find someone to integrate with straight away. It was my first time living in Asia, which was probably a very I don't want to say cultural shock, but obviously you don't find the same things that you're used to back home, or even Latin America was quite more similar to Italy in a way. So also from that perspective, the communication, the food, everything needed a little bit more of an adjustment. And then in the end, it ended up being a wonderful opportunity. I still have a couple of very, very good friends from then, although being more than 10 years ago now. But yeah, sometimes, all these new things, new beginning, lack of community, different culture, language, then they can make the move a little bit more difficult.
And what was the easiest one?
The easiest one probably was London. The easiest probably was London, because as I was telling you, I did have already a job, a house, a community. So, and this was pre-Brexit, so I didn't need even a visa.
I will also drop in with one little story from my side. So we lived for about 2 years in the Netherlands, and one thing which for me and my wife was very difficult on the cultural side was the directness of the Dutch, for example. So I'm Italian, she's Filipina, and you can imagine we have obviously you're Italian. We have it's one of those cultures where, you have a different touch points, right? And the Dutch can be very direct at times, to the point where they come across to be so rude, which will literally shock you. And we had a couple of instances, which, I will not make all the examples, but we were left didn't know what to say literally, because the way they deliver the message to you, whether you're asking information at the train guy at the train station or your colleagues at work, because I was working in an agency at the time, it simply leaves you speechless. And so this will never happen in the UK, for instance. No, so. But over time, then we got used to it. And, it also had a positive side, which I will mention now, which is the transparency and the accountability. Because I highly value those things personally, also in my work, where I like if someone tells me I'll be there at 10 o'clock, you will be there at 10 o'clock, and not show at 11 or not showing at all, right? Where in the Netherlands, you book an appointment, an electrician, he will come the time he said. If he will not come, he will call you and tell you. Here in Croatia, it's a different story. For example, you book an electrician, you're lucky if he shows at all, or sometimes they don't show at all. So there's both sides of the picture. And also, I had to also recalibrate myself when we moved here, and now I work with more international clients. I had to also think that at times I cannot be so direct myself, because I know it backfire. One time there was one UK client, for example, and think about this, due only to my communication with some person in the team, they didn't give me some collaboration after all, because they thought I couldn't handle client communications, which I was so upset about. But then looking back, I thought, okay, I was really direct with them, and perhaps that pushed things too much for them. They thought, oh, if he speaks to clients, that I'm not going to say enough please, basically, in every paragraph, like in the UK. I'm exaggerating now, but you get the point. So this is super interesting, and I think from a cultural perspective, those are the things that I'm super interested about. When I work with people from different countries, I also try to tell them, hey, don't take it personally when you communicate with different cultures, because we do communicate differently. Even though it's global, we speak with people from all around the world, but the culture still matters. So I was thinking now at your experience in Thailand, and I thought that must have been also something. I don't know if they're difficult to communicate, but the language is one, and I can see others. Or I don't know if you ever had to do with the Japanese. The Japanese is incredible. So sometimes you cannot talk about work stuff unless you talk about non-work stuff. And then you need to establish the relationships first. And then once those are in place, you can talk about work stuff. In other words, you have to go out drinking with them first. And then let's say if you're new, and then you'll establish the relationship. Or one more. My wife was telling me that in the Philippines, it's common in office that you cannot leave the office unless your boss leaves the office. So, and only if you, let's say you are kind of strong and say, no, I go home now. Let's say 5:30, I go home. But most colleagues will be like, no, we cannot go home. Boss is still there. Where, it's foreign for us, right? Because I remember when I was working in London, I was finished with my work, I don't even have to say those things. They care that you complete your work, or even if you say, look, I go home because X, Y, Z, no one will challenge you. Did you finish your work? Which is something I highly value when I work in London. No, you don't have to punch the time. I don't know, it changed now, but probably not. So those are fascinating things. And when you live and work in different countries, you see all these things, and for me are fascinating. I don't know if you had also one about this.
That's true. And the reality is that for each of these things, as you say, there's like the good side and the bad side. I give you an example for Greece, which is a country that we were talking about. Families in Greece are really present, which is something that I really like. The communication.
You mean, Federica, sorry if I interrupt, more than Italy, I guess, next level.
See, again, I come from northern Italy, so my parents are okay. They are present, but not overwhelming. Greeks are like pretty present, especially if you're there physically. They would call you up. They will ask you to come over to help them with their laptop. Like, we don't live there, but I do hear from, for example, my brother-in-law and sister-in-law. But in a way, it's like they're always present, always available. They will cook you dinner. It's something that I actually find really beautiful. But on the other hand, for some people, especially other cultures, a bit more northerners or from abroad, it could feel like it's very intrusive when you're like 35 and the mother-in-law is always kind of calling you up every two minutes to ask for something, right? So everything can be interpreted. I think it's about staying positive and open. And learning the culture, adjusting to it, because the reality is that, again, you cannot just go there and pretend that you're back home, the same as we were saying before. And I do think learning these things also comes hand in hand with learning the language, because until you learn a language, you cannot really fully, I know that in the Netherlands, they speak better English than the Brits, but in most countries, that's not the case. And I always hear now, people will not need to learn languages anymore because of AI, which I'm like, no, that's not true. It's actually proven that your mind shifts, your personality shifts when you speak a different language, the way that you behave with people shifts. So it's obviously, if it's just a very functional setting, that's fine. But to live abroad, that's really not half the way to communication.
I totally agree. The Dutch, yes, they will speak English, but with one interesting point. So let's say you're in a meeting room, everybody speaks Dutch, you go in, they will switch, but they will make you notice it, and you feel awkward at times. Oh, Gabriel's here, we will speak English now. And 7 people will start speaking English for you. And you're like, oh man, they're speaking English only for me. But for them, it's cool. They don't have a problem with it. It's just at times, it made me feel like, oh man, they're doing all the effort only for one person in the room. But that's also, I think, very, very understanding, and shows how open they are for that communications.
We Italians, we wouldn't do. Now we live in English, so we're good. But if you go to, Rome and a Brit comes in a group of 10 Italians, I don't think it's granted to change language.
It did change though, because, I'm married to my wife, a number of years, 2 decades nearly. And since we got married, and I'm from Trieste originally. And so I remember the first time I came in Trieste, she visited, and they were hardly speaking any English to her, like literally nothing. But now when we go in Trieste, most people, when she goes first, let's say in a coffee shop and stuff, they speak English to her right away. And it's not Milan, it's just tiny Trieste, because we had so many tourists. Now there's always the direct flight from London, by the way. So we had a lot of tourists coming. So something did change there, and for the better part. Even if we're together, they see me, they speak with me in English, which is great. And hello, I can speak the language here. So that's improving. I don't know about Greece and Cyprus. Cyprus, I would guess.
Yeah, Cyprus, they speak very good English. In Greece, they speak really good English. But again, if it's a social setting and you have 10 groups of friends having a glass of wine, then it might take a little bit of nudging. Now I speak as well, luckily, but the first few years, sometimes I was just thinking a bit about my stuff in some settings because it's hard to ask, right? It's not the same. So I get it. I get it.
I have two more questions that sparked from your latest point. So AI and immigration or assistance for relocating. Probably you did some research and checking what the AI is recommending now. So, and I had this conversation with nearly all my guests because it's always on the cards: AI in marketing, AI in sales, AI in your field of expertise in this case. Do you think it can help, especially someone looking to retire in this case, or should be taken with a big pinch of salt in this case?
I do think if it's a software that is specifically built to do that advice, to give that advice, then it should be safe, right? If it's Italy, there is a company in Italy, a startup that says we're going to streamline immigration. We update everything. We take care of everything. We instruct the model to resonate the way that an immigration lawyer would be. I think that definitely can help. Perhaps always with a review, but definitely can streamline the work. I wouldn't rely on just going on ChatGPT and asking because the laws change dramatically. They, especially on immigration, but also tax. The personal circumstances cannot be discounted. Like there's not an objective truth. You need to really understand, how many days you've been resident in a place or in another one, where you have assets. It's not as easy as asking a question to ChatGPT. So on that one, I tend to warn people. It can be used for things that are a bit lighter. Again, give me some tips for what we were saying, integration. What do people do on their birthdays? How do you recommend me to speak with my neighbor? This is all, good stuff, and it's gonna be always positive in a way. But for things that are technical and there is, a lot of things at risk in a sense of being denied visas, paying over taxes, then I would probably pay for a professional.
Yeah, definitely. So I would agree with this. So as myself a professional in the field, I would say for high-level research to getting ideas, brainstorming, perhaps comparing countries, great. But if you really need specific information, you'll have too many moving parts because your situation will be highly specific. So in this case, talk to the experts, check in with Federica, and get proper advice. Great stuff. I have one more question as well in this area. What do you prioritize when building long-term relationships with your clients?
I think it's good to start on the same foot, with the same perspective of how we want the work to happen. So I think trust is really important. The way that I established the company, with me being at the base, but also as it scales, is to give always visibility to clients, to make them feel that they are that we are taking care of them. Because the reality is that relocation abroad at every age, but especially with someone does it in retirement with so many things at stake, there's always an element of worry. So I think for me to make the relationship successful long term is to not leave space for doubts, for questioning, to always give them that peace of mind that we are, even if they don't hear from us for 2 weeks because maybe there's no news, but we have them under our radar always. So I think that proactive communication, transparency, and care, they're always very important. This comes from us. I also, again, what we were saying in terms of alignment, I also like to see it from the client perspective. I do like to work with people that trust us. They're saying obviously they're not disappearing in terms of their own judgment, but I have had one client who was coming to me at every call of I have read this thing on ChatGPT that is different from what you're saying. I'm like, then don't pay me, It started being a little bit harder after a while. And I did have to tell them, again, I'm happy to, if there's any specific, a bit broader, but for things that is technical, I spend all day long looking into it. I do work with partners that are specialized in this. So please just stop asking ChatGPT. So I think that mutual trust is also really important.
Very good point here. Thank you, Federica. What does excite you most about the future of what you do now?
What really, really excites me is that I would like to bring really a defining energy to the sector, in a sense that retirement abroad has been existing for many years, but it was a pretty niche thing, either for really, really rich people or for people sometimes a little bit from the lower class backgrounds or economic backgrounds that really saw the opportunity for cost of living reasons, but it was a really difficult move. It's just that it was really life-changing in that sense. Whereas now it's being democratized, really, like more and more people from every background are thinking about it. And what I would like to create is really the sector, the setup to make it possible for them, to not make them think that they are outliers, to make it easier from the perspective of taking the decision, making the move. Really, if you think about a curve of when people start thinking about it and then they're serious about it and then they do move. Now it's like a pretty big funnel, and in the end it's just a small percentage. So I would really like to open up that funnel, so to bring really some thought leadership and energy to the sector, from a customer standpoint, but also from an institutional standpoint. So to make the immigration routes easier. As you know, my background is in government relations, so one day I would also like to add, let's say, a B2G branch that also helps governments create those tax incentives or immigration rules for retirees. So again, long term, I would really like to become that company that helps not just make it possible, but to make it more popular and more not stigmatized and normalized. I think living abroad is a wonderful opportunity. We've had it because when we were younger, it was, demystified. But, many people years ago didn't have the chance of an Erasmus or other things, and I would like to make it possible for them.
On the awareness, I think that's lacking at the moment on these things. And that's why also we're having this conversation here, because I thought what you do is interesting, something a bit unique for me to also hear. And, I do have a number of people in my network that do all sorts of things. And when I saw what you do, I thought, okay, this is super interesting. I want to speak to her. And at the governmental / legislative level, I think this is also in fact lacking. And, there are some countries making it simpler. Let's be honest, we're really lucky around Europe because it's super simple to relocate. Now we're changing country and it's easy. And I found also some partners that help with the setup of the company, Italians, by the way. So Italians abroad are really crafty and they come up with interesting businesses. So there's someone helping me with importing the car. There's someone helping obviously with a fee, but right fee for opening the company. And so I don't have to do it in Czech or get a translator. And that's easy because then for residents, I can just switch my residence and that's simple. But for the rest of the world to migrate here or the opposite is not so simple, let's be honest. And the government is not always, even in the websites for immigration is not so simple. Are you planning to maybe go do public speaking on this? How do you plan on making people aware other than webinars online and these things?
What I have started with has been the press and webinar, but there is interest from the press just because they do realize that the readers have interest. And interestingly, I found it really easy to get coverage there, probably because there's very few experts in this field globally. And obviously having the institutional background to and the knowledge to be able to advise on it. But so yeah, that's kind of the starting point. I would like to start doing some monthly webinars to make it, to address some of the key questions that people have, and also perhaps to open a YouTube channel that touches on these topics. So obviously the idea is to be more and more proactive in terms of my own communication, and then hopefully, word is spreading, a little bit of marketing, and increase that awareness. I don't think that everyone should relocate, so that's something that I just want to emphasize. I'm not trying to sell relocation to people that don't want to do it. If someone is very happy at home, maybe they have their children close by, their grandchildren close by, I'm not going to go there and sell them that they need to move abroad, absolutely. For me, it's just about the people that have that energy inside, the feeling, they're longing, and at this stage, they're perhaps scared, they don't know where to find help, and they just give up. I think for me, that's a missed life opportunity, and I want to change that. But just to say, I'm not trying to sell it to everybody. So I think awareness, but for people that are also interested, of course.
One more question for Federica before we do our closing. The shift from expert to business owner, as in, what changed from when you were a consultant to being then a business owner, and maybe things that you didn't think or, you're not considering at the beginning, or what surprised you the most?
That's a very good question, just because I'm actually in that phase of the shift right now. The first year, I was always set up as a limited company, but the reality is that it was me doing most things, being really obviously centered on the advice, but also the business development and the marketing. But see, one person and many hats. And this is the phase in which, the inflection point in which it's starting to feel like a company. I do need to delegate work. I will need to hire someone. I guess I will step back from some of the things that I have been doing to give them to someone who is hopefully even better than me at this. And it's really wonderful. I think, what it entails is that it's not just about the knowledge of what you're doing, but it starts becoming, you need to also create then your own knowledge about systems, about your brand, and how to make sure that it's consistent even as you grow in many countries and complexity increases. So all that, I'm really working right now to create very strong fundamentals that can support then a bigger castle. And these are, again, very, very different things, but I think really important to to get clear on earlier. So again, from the systems, the operations, the blueprints, knowledge sharing, internal branding, company cultures and values, how we work with clients. So I'm really trying to get very clear on this, reflect on my path, and then codify so that then I can grow. And I think in a sense, because you asked what, not necessarily what surprised you, but what I would have done differently would have been to take note of things from a bit earlier. In a sense, obviously all the knowledge of, the visas and everything was being codified from the beginning, but the little experiences from client interactions, the questions that sometimes they ask, the limitations that they face. This is obviously things that I have integrated in my own way of working, but I don't have them written anywhere. And so it's quite hard right now. And I think I'm a little bit reinventing the wheel now that I want to put them on paper. So I think it's pretty good to, the famous diary of a CEO from day one to really, take notes of everything that is happening, not just the important stuff, but the small details, because this ends up being pretty useful, I think.
Yeah. And to add to the mix, also these days you have so many channels, right? When it comes to your marketing, which can be scary, because what I hear from some company owners and people in my network, that they overspend in marketing. It's funny, it's my area, right? But it's very tempting, right? Because you're bombarded left and right with everything about marketing. And even me, I get bombarded left and right all the time by people wanting to do all sorts of things. But this, for a business owner, it is a challenge these days where we have too many options for everything, right? There's too much of everything. So I mean, your business, the business itself, I think is super unique and niche, which is great. But then, you add complexities for all the other elements. You just shared your Federica knowledge, basically, which is in you because you were the brain behind everything. And now you want to scale systems, essentially. So this is, I would say, a phase where every founder goes through, but it's always amusing to see, and I'm always excited to hear these stories. Thank you for sharing that. Where can people find you, and what's the best channel, speaking of channels?
Well, I will start with our website, of course, where everything is always updated. That is mitosrelocation.com. Mitos is spelled MITOS. We didn't go into the story, but that means the thread in Greek. Is a thread that took the hero out of labyrinth when they got lost. Anyway, long story short. So that's kind of our idea of how we want to work with clients to give them a thread out of a difficult labyrinth. That's mitosrelocation.com. We're also active on social media. I think Facebook and LinkedIn are the ones a bit more active at this stage. So obviously very welcome to join us there. We do have a newsletter connected to that free resource we mentioned earlier, the 5-step relocation process. So that will be available on most of our channels, but check the website. There is a full page that describes what it is, and hopefully with the newsletter you can stay up to date with news in the industry and about our services as well.
Perfect. Can people contact you via email as well?
I would recommend to first take a look at the website to understand a little bit more, but I'm also available by email, of course. That's my name, federica.grazi@mitosrelocation.com, or also LinkedIn. I'm very active, so just check out my profile, add me, and feel free to send me a message there.
Perfect. And we will link all Federica's links as usual in the description box and from our LinkedIn posts as well. Thank you so much for a great conversation. We will close with our final question, which I ask everybody. Is there a guest you would like to see next on our Rock SEO channel, and who would that be?
I will nominate a colleague. She's also based in London. She's called Marina Sidwell-Kutumova. And I would like to nominate her because she follows an industry which is pretty connected, but at the same time very different, which is residency and citizenship by investment. So all the, golden visa and similar kind of initiatives. A lot of people ask us, do you kind of do the same thing? Because there's immigration and optimization. The reality is that there is overlap, but at the same time, we work with very different individuals. So I think it will be really interesting to compare what she's doing to kind of understand a little bit better about the overall broader industry of international mobility.
For sure. Please send over her contact. I'll get in touch with her.
Wonderful. Thank you, Gabriel.
Great. Thank you so much, Federica. And guys, make sure to follow Federica on her channels. And thank you once again. And I'll see you to the next episode. Bye.
Bye.